Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. Everybody had a good time today? Enjoying the event?
Woo!
Only 3 people enjoy the event? How's everybody feeling this afternoon? Okay, we'll try. Guys, we need to work hard warming up this audience, I think. But thanks everybody for coming, and I'm quite amazed by this event gathering of several good hundreds of people from various international origins. We also here have a very, very international panel with very interesting perspectives of various people all around the topic of content. The panel's name, as you saw in the program, is Revolutionizing Content Through Video. We have another panelist on his way, will be joining us in a second, Renee Rechman, but we already have here an amazing group of people, Daniel, Chris, Matt, and Michael, and the best way to learn about them will be to get a quick introduction firsthand.
Sure. So I'm Daniel Fisher. I founded a company called Viral Spiral 3 years ago. That company connected influencers, mostly social video influencers, YouTubers, Viners, with brands and agencies. We sold the business in July to a company called Rightster, which is a video distribution company. So now, together with that company and another acquisition they made, we're the biggest multi-channel network outside of North America.
And just for the people who are not really familiar with the term, multi-channel network means?
Sure, so multi-channel networks are things, these sort of beasts that have grown up over the last 3 years. They were originally YouTube-backed projects. They're essentially companies that aggregate a large number of primarily YouTube channels and then monetize those channels through running pre-roll advertising and also doing brand deals against them. Excellent.
Chris.
Great. My name is Chris Whiteley. I head up digital at BBC Worldwide. We are the commercial arm of the BBC, the license fee funded broadcaster in the UK here. So I head up a number of our digital operations around the world. We're based in London but have offices all around the world, including businesses like the non-news parts of BBC.com, our YouTube and short form business, which we intermittently refer to as an MCN or not, depending on your share price, whether they're flavour of the month or not, and BBC Worldwide Labs, which is our early stage incubator company as well.
Excellent. And so aside of heading that digital operation, what types of avenues are you using to commercialize this BBC content?
Yeah, so we have a number of businesses of routes to market for BBC Worldwide, for the BBC's content and other content companies that we represent through sales to third parties. So, you know, we've been a launch partner with companies like Netflix in pretty much every territory they've launched in so far. Work really closely with them and Amazon and Hulu and all the other sort of big SVOD platforms. Then we run our own service as well, so we have our own SVOD service ourselves, and we run digital publishing businesses like BBC.com, where we have a lot of short form content, and we publish through YouTube as well, and other short form platforms.
Great.
So lots of different ways.
Absolutely, and we'll dig into that in just one moment. Matt.
Oded.
Tell us a little bit. You're running Diagonal View, which is also around this space, but it's a bit different from what these guys are doing in digital platforms. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's actually called Diagonal View with the idea that it would be a bit different. So we'd take a diagonal look at traditional media and think through how we could repurpose that content for the internet. So we started in 2008 with kind of a creative vision, which is that medium would require either new productions, post-production, graphics, animation, etc., to kind of contemporize media for either a short form or mobile experience or for feeds rather than for programmed content on television. And so the idea was to start a production studio that addressed and made digital content first. And really the philosophy is that if you imagine the input into how you make TV is either a couple of generally old men in a room saying, we want to commission that, and here's the target demo of that programming slot. And don't we know somebody who we went to school with, have done deals with before, et cetera, we'll give them some money and they'll make that show. Or some iteration of that on television. The iteration of digital is actually, like in our world, 1 million to 2 million single purchase decisions a day with an eyeball or a person clicking on or touching, in the case of tablet or mobile phone, saying, I want to take a look at that content. And so what it is much more of a meritocracy, but in a way, not a meritocracy in that it's knowledge-based, in that we have to develop technology tools or insights, or just frankly people, who appreciate that we have to stay on our toes all the time. And to just add a bit of a punchline to that, if we produced a cable show, our biggest show is All Time Tens, which has 1 million views a day, which would be around the size of Sons of Anarchy, which is the largest cable show in America. So we're just below NFL football in terms of weekly view count. And there's 35 people in London, and I've unfortunately only told a little bit of the story.
And how many views did you have in your network up to date?
Oh my God, billions.
Billions, yeah.
I don't know how many billion. We sort of stopped counting at some point. And the other thing we do is manage third-party content. So we've met with the Beeb before, and we manage the Olympics and One Direction and a lot of really big professional content online to achieve that same sort of audience cut-through.
Great. So so you can, I think it's very interesting to see two different angles. One of them is Chris, who has all the BBC content and is trying to get it to every mobile device, tablet, Netflix, connected TV, and what have you. And on the other hand, the new generation of companies like Diagonal View that are going directly, I mean, maybe also TV, but going directly and building the content to begin with for these platforms. And eventually, of course, everybody will read the same screens. And Michael, you are also adding some disruption to your country. So in your case, tell us a little bit more. We have a panelist here, all based in the UK. Matt originally is from Canada, but you're bringing, I'm from Israel. We're bringing here a very different international angle than what we used to see in Tech Conference. So please introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, first of all. My name is Michael Fakes. I'm representing the Seznam.cz company, which is actually quite old company, established 18 years ago. Since then, doing services on the internet. You can imagine a similar company like Yahoo and Google. We are actually a media or portal-like company which is running our own free mail service, our own maps services, services to compare prices on the internet, and even our own search engine, which, by the way, there are just 4 countries in the world which are still dominating the local search market in their countries. One of those 4 countries is Czech Republic, and Seznam is beating Google on our own ground, so we are very proud of it. And a few years ago, we actually changed our mind about how to work with the video, because we believe the video is the next big step on the internet. And we actually tried many different steps and many different scenarios. We were trying to build something like YouTube a few years ago, which obviously can't beat the size of the YouTube and size of the Google. So we switched a few years ago to create our own content and try to beat the competition through our own way. And that's the way how we, at the moment, penetrate actually 90% of the Czech internet users, which is quite a nice number, I do believe.
So you're pretty much winning the Czech market. Now, do you have any plans beyond that to go globally, to go at least to other Austro-Hungarian colonies?
Too late, pal.
Well, yes, we do, but as you can imagine, that's quite a hard ambition after 18 years when you build a company which is trying to dominate the local market. And if you decide after 18 years that you would like to go global, in a situation where everyone else is already being global, or at least started certain changes in his own company a few years ago, that's quite a hard story. So at the moment, we are trying to do our best to be #1 in Czech Republic, because we believe that this is, at the moment, the most important part of our business. And yes, we are trying to go global The Czech language is actually spoken by 10 million people all around the world, so it's not that easy, part. It might be much more easy if we decide to go global maybe 5 or maybe 18 years ago when the company's been established. That would definitely change the scenario.
And speaking about the international dimension, René, first, thanks. I know what efforts you've done to get here, so thanks for coming. And let me refer a question to the audience. How many people in the audience have heard about Maker Studio? Yeah, so the majority, still surprisingly maybe for us who live it every day, not everybody knows. I mean, last year maybe 5 people would have raised their hands, most likely people 10 years or more younger than me. And now more and more people know it, and more people understand, but we still have a gap of education. So René is here to fill it for us. So can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, about Maker Studio?
Sure. So how many in here know, how many knows YouTube in here? So almost everybody, right?
Yeah, the rest are asleep. We
exactly.
saw that in the beginning, yeah.
So, so Maker Studio is an entertainment company that goes under the definition multi-channel network. We are a significant part of YouTube's channels and audience. I don't think the number has been officially communicated, so I'll keep that close, but we are a big part of their business. And we are creating and aggregating content across most genres on the internet, and we're distributing and monetizing that on YouTube, on OTTs, other digital platforms, and now also linear TV. So that's what we do.
Yeah, and it's not an independent company anymore, of course.
Excuse me?
It's not an independent company.
No, we got acquired in May by Disney, who look at us like they have already theatrical, they have TV, now they have made-for-web short-form content. So we are part of Disney, but still independent in our operations.
Yeah, and this is not your first successful adventure with a video-related startup. Can you tell us a bit about your previous adventure?
I've been very lucky. I've been part of a few exits before, and one of them was video-related. It was the first wave of, let's say, video on the internet. Still, when the broadband was weak, we realized that that will change when technology will improve. People will start doing different things than searching for cheap travels on the internet. So we developed a video company called Go Viral. And 5 years later, we sold it to AOL. And now, I guess, Maker Studios and Diagonal View and a few others are the next generation video companies out there.
And now that you're in Disney, which is old school, classic, big media company, and back in the day, AOL, which was a more established new media company, if you may, do you really think that what we're seeing now is a disruption of the industry, or is just an evolution when every new media company has its own new digital arm?
I think from a macro point of view, it's an evolution at this stage. For the millennials, it's a revolution that is going through the whole value chain, from the way we discover talent, for the way you create content, the way you distribute and consume and monetize content. It's completely changing across the whole value chain. But for the millennials, right, if you look at the total industry, the TV industry is still a 200 billion industry that is, let's say, under evolution. But if you look at all the newest report, there's a lot of changes happening.
Yeah. And
I think as BBC, you can probably recognize a lot of
exactly what we're seeing, is a kind of generational shift in behaviour. So we've just moved BBC 3, one of our sort of big channels aimed at a slightly young audience, away from linear TV. That's just going out now on iPlay, which is our own digital platform there. So we're heavily involved in YouTube as well, and doing a lot of work in that area to bring that millennial audience. I think you're exactly right, René. It's very much a generational shift, what we're seeing.
Yeah, no, but although if we look at let's say the classic Maker Studio channel, that I mean today they do a lot of also of work for or cooperations with big media companies, but you also always think about the indie talent kind of guy who knows how to make everything and produce alone, or two people that can do a really quality production of something. And that's also, as the panel topic is, that's revolutionizing the content. Do you see that as well in your role at BBC?
In terms of the kind of democratization of production?
Not just that, more about the revolution of the content itself, because Maker Studio is definitely very different content than BBC, at least in the perspective.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think as well as it being a kind of generational shift, well, that's a big factor. I think as well the type of content that's being produced. I think there's still, and I firmly believe there'll always be a role for big budget, really high production value drama, for instance. You know, things like for us, for Sherlock's, the Doctor Who's This World, the Breaking Bads. You know, they're the kind of things that are really big budget expensive, and as we're seeing sort of a polarization of production budgets. We've seen it in film, we've seen it in music going on, see it in TV, and there'll be huge swathes of TV that will, come down to, far more accessible production budgets, but I do believe there'll still remain some that will be at the top, that will sit behind paywalls, behind subscription services, led by the likes of Netflix and Amazon Prime and such, and I think that piece is harder to disrupt, but certainly in almost everything else.
But I think the trend is that the SVOD model is growing rapidly.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about cable maybe is growing 1-2%, if at all growing, while the SVOD model, so the Hulos and Amazons and Netflix, they're growing rapidly. I don't know what the exact percentage is, but I think it's 35-40% growth year on year.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing that kind of performance, within them. So, you can really see a kind of polarization of the content going on in the video content.
Yeah, and like we say I also have some adventures in the gaming industry as well. So as Renee, we have a saying there that every day somebody who never played a game in his life dies, and two babies that will play game all their lives are born. So that's pretty much also true for, and thank you, ma'am. And that's probably also true for this. Now, Daniel, for you, it's probably as somebody, I'm not sure if you're still focused on brands and taking brands into this world. How do you take established brands, sometimes conservative with all of the marketing and advertising staff there, and bring them into the world that Renee just described?
Sure. So this is a massive growth area, probably for every company represented here. I think there is a natural shift of TV money going onto digital. That's just happening. Digital video in the US by 2017 is going to be something like 17 billion. So the money is shifting, but it's about demonstrating to brands return on investment. These people brands are inherently risk averse. So you've got to demonstrate proper return on investment to them. The beauty of digital and online, of course, is that you can get some proper and really deep metrics. So you know exactly the audience you're talking to. I'm sure Maker do exactly the same thing. And Diagonal View, when you talk to brands directly, you're saying, okay, this is the audience you want to target, and we know a lot of information about this audience and what they're watching. So it's about matching those two things together and demonstrating that you understand the audience the brand is talking to.
And Matt, do you agree it's more adding the content to kind of a structured advertising process, or you think it's more kind of, let's say, long tail environment that you need to bring into the brands when we're talking about brands?
I think it's a really good question. There's a lot of, I think there's people sitting on both sides of that fence. I don't think it's quite church and state, but I think originally when we set out as a business, we wanted to make major channels for an internet-based audience. Thinking through, then we could at least understand what audience wanted. As a producer, we then could have that dialogue, and if we did then start to work with brands, we would have that discipline in-house to know what brands would want, say if it was sponsored content. And undoubtedly, we, even within rivalries, are known as people who make very well-viewed content. So I think that's one side of the discipline. The other side is, as a business that's not venture funded, we needed to think through making conservative bets. And by having lots and lots of views without necessarily making that stuff very expensively or in a risky way, i.e. we went for audience first, what we did is even though YouTube was still paying in pennies, if you go back to 2008, it was like ringtones and little pop-up frog things. It was a long way from, like over the summer, we had a $50 pre-roll on a lot of our content.
Really?
And those frogs were not paying us $50 CPMs, just to be clear. So as one, we got more cut through. So we do own and produce the second largest football channel in the world, just beneath FC Barcelona. So yeah, I'm taking 6 years and compressing them into one comment. But the idea that someone, a shoe brand would pay $50 to be on that is perfectly reasonable when they're spending $70 to $150 to be on television. And arguably, we have a more engaged viewer. My point being, in terms of church and state, you can offer sponsored content, but you better know what you're offering. Or you can offer incredibly dedicated audiences and put pre-roll on it. But I think it maybe starts with that audience understanding first.
Yeah, I have to say, I personally have, I don't know if a personal preference or personal taste, but I really believe that people that will build their audience and will be able to keep their, without compromising their integrity, to integrate brand, that will probably be the most effective way. I don't know how many people will be able to do it, though.
For me, I think that's a really impressive thing about a lot of the creative kind of production that we're seeing. I mean, I guess BBC, we historically have had a huge separation of church and state, and there's, never, the commercial and the editorial sides should never meet, and that's kind of slowly changing, and they're coming together, and there's a much more realization and appreciation of what each other does. And I have to say, I'm always impressed by creatives who are able to bridge that divide and produce stuff that meets their sponsors and brand needs, and also is still really high quality content for their audiences, right?
If I think through it, and this is a little bit, to the SVOD point, if I think through what the value of Netflix is really an understanding of its audience, right? And then it can backfill with its own productions, right? So if it understands what its audience need is, it may not get it right perfectly the first time, but at least on a litmus test, it's going to know what that audience wants better than not knowing, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So
that's 100%.
I think that idea of that data capture is when people think content, they usually don't think data capture. And it's probably the most valuable part of a digital business versus an analog business.
Yeah, just the fact that you have an infrastructure with so many, that is so measurable to begin with, and people develop so many tools is really, that's maybe, I don't know if a disruption is the right word, but this is really a fundamental change. Now, compared to the old school, Michael, of course, we don't know much about Czech Republic, but do you see in the local scene also the revolution in content that we described here, as a way to build audiences, to get brands on board, and so forth?
It's definitely a revolution. I mean, we have all seen this in the music industry. There were people a few years ago that were actually saying that the CDs here will be forever, and we know what the truth is today. And the same thing is coming with the video. Actually, there are different kind of companies, but always you have to need two things on the internet. You need audience, and you need content. The Netflix, by the way, started with the audience. He didn't have the content, his own content. He has his external content. Now he's trying to have his own content, because that's very necessary to stay in the industry. From the other side, the TVs are in a very complicated situation, certain ones, because not just in Czech Republic or around the world, the TVs have the audience, but most of their content is actually owned by the studios, and they decide what's the distribution of the content, if they want to put it online, if they want to put it online on their own sites, or if they use or accept the distribution from the TV point of view. And then you have a third thing, which is very, very problematic for the TVs, and that's the costs. Because first thing is that creating the content in TV is much more expensive than creating content in the internet industry. That's the first typical difference, and even with the same or similar quality. And of course, on the internet, you don't have to buy the frequencies, you don't have to have licenses to stream your content on the terrestrial or satellite. You just push your contents on your servers and to the audience, and that's all your costs, actually. So this is another point of view which will be very, very, very hard for TVs to cross, because you can't just say, okay, let's change the industry so the TVs won't have to pay for the licenses and for the frequencies. That just doesn't make sense. You just can't make the change that radically.
Well, I think so. It's no different in one territory in the global world. I think we all agree to that. And by the way, I think the example that was brought up a few times in the discussion of Netflix, that's maybe the real true disruptor of the whole video business, in a sense, if you look at disruption in a way that fundamentally changed the way people did things. Now,
though interesting with Netflix, even they now are looking for distribution partners. So, you know, in the UK, they've just done deals with BT, with Virgin, with all of the
yeah, in Israel, we don't have the Netflix service, so we actually see the House of Cards on the satellite channel.
Yeah.
Now, we need to wrap up really soon, so, but I want the audience to take also something, a word of advice and from your experience and wisdom. So I'll make it one question with two parts. One of them is, and what do you think will be, if there's an entrepreneur in the audience that says, I'm fascinated by this, what will be the next big things, where I should take my startup, where I should build it around the video ecosystem? And to that, the same entrepreneur, what if you have word of advice, a quick word of advice, we'll do it very briefly.
Build a business around transparency of online video advertising inventory, and then build a programmatic system around that and have the first fully transparent programmatic buying system, and you'll make loads of money.
Yeah, raise loads of money. That's a good advice.
Yeah.
And try also to make a lot of money. That might come in handy too.
I mean, I'll say something that I think, I don't suppose anyone else would touch on, because I think everyone will be very focused on the sort of technology behind it. But from a creative perspective, I think thinking about new creative formats is a really interesting one at the moment. You know, you look at Netflix, and really what they've done is taken the same TV content and moved it online. And the biggest innovation in terms of the actual content is just varying the episode length, just slightly saying, so it doesn't have to be exactly.
So you're saying we should do content startups rather than tech? You said it because you're a content guy, or just you think that the tech is commoditized and the creativity is in the content?
Just to offer a bit of variety, so you can, there is space for creativity on the content side of things as well. And if you create content formats that can work well and can scale and can capture an imagination in a different way, then I think that could be hugely valuable.
Excellent. Matt, again, you see this thing blinking, so guys, we just need to be...
I think that's a really good point. I would come at it from a different perspective. So around a year and a half ago, we started making videos for BuzzFeed. And we made animal videos, lists, other things for them. And what I think was really clever about BuzzFeed is it's the first time I've seen a platform since YouTube that's been really powerful in engaging audiences directly. And I think a lot of the risk of the businesses in content at the moment are that either you're making stuff or you're controlling an audience, but very rarely are you making stuff and directing it straight through to an audience. So I think our next stage as a business, and probably there'll be businesses that take a crack at this as independents, is to think through how we create more direct audience engagement.
So direct audience, yeah, well, actually, you guys know a little bit what I do, so I couldn't agree with this more, but I have an agenda, increasing the interaction. Michael, good advice to the entrepreneurs,
Well, I would say that the end devices might be a good thing to look at. I mean, we already consume video on the tablets, on the mobiles, on everything, except the flat TVs. That's actually something which is still stick to the last century, and we are still having almost the same devices that we had a few years ago. Even the smart TVs are still terrible things to use, actually, if you want to use it interactively like your mobile or tablet. So I think this is the next say, important and attractive part of the industry.
Yeah. But again, I'm sorry to the audience that we have to agree all the time, but I agree to that as well. And René, before the trap door opens and swallows
I'll keep
your smart advice.
Keep it very short, right?
No, and again, I think it's a great
Go
way to...
Go global or stay poor. I think that's my advice.
Great. And I think this is a very good advice from a guy who is very humble about his successes, but when you serially do so many good startups, and help them grow, that's maybe not just luck. Thank you very much. You were a great panel.